Welcome to the Mortal Realms, an Age of Sigmar podcast. Grab your hammer so we can clear a path through the chaos and forge our own narratives in the Age of Sigmar. Your allies through the Realm Gate this episode are...
Hi, my name is Paul, and you must be from Actually, because you are burning me up.
I'm Aaron, and for the record, Tamara von Dreck, more like Tamara von, not going to be the Mortarch of Grief.
Hey.
And this is Eric, and we're in the Soul Wars. Dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun, in the Soul Wars.
Oh, no.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks. How you gentlemen doing tonight?
Really warmed up.
Thanks for indulging me in that. Thanks for indulging me in that. How you guys doing?
Good.
For the record, listeners, we didn't plan any of that dancing, so that was spontaneous.
You know what I am? I'm a foreign correspondent this week. I'm in some place called Nina.
Never heard of it.
Yeah. He's about...
Yeah, me neither, but I'm here.
You're about 120 miles, 300, 200 miles away from your home right now?
100 miles. I don't know. Somewhere between Appleton and Milwaukee.
Yeah. Everybody knows where that is.
Sure.
So you're away from home and you're phoning it in.
Yes.
I mean, how's that different than usual?
Because I'm not away from home. I'm usually phoning it in, but I'm away from home this time, hence the foreign correspondent.
So tonight we're going to do some things a little bit differently. Hey, Paul, we can't hear the audience laugh, so we can't pause for it. So tonight we're going to be doing something a little bit different. It's not a story phase tonight. We're not spending the time. I know Aaron's a little bummed out about that. But a lot of information about AoS 2.0 has come since the last time we recorded. New models have been shown, and the preview of Soul Wars has dropped. And so there's a lot to and there's a lot of that to talk about. And we wanted to spend some time, just the three of us. Davy couldn't make it tonight. Just chatting about this a little bit. And then we also wanted to talk a little bit about some things that we've been up to in preparation of AoS 2.0, kind of our own hobby, our own content creation and involvement in the community, etc. There's always a time and place to reinvent yourself once in a while. So first and foremost, I guess let's talk a little bit about what we've been up to in the hobby or in this so-called content creation cycle that I was just talking about. Paul, what have you been up to either in preparation of AoS 2.0 or just for shits and giggles?
Whoa, that's gonna get us the tail.
Explicit tag.
Yep, there we go. Anyway, no. So I have been working on my Sea Guard army, not necessarily for AoS 2.0, but it's something I had started a while ago. I did just rebase it, and I made a conversion out of my Sea Lord, putting him on the back of my Murworm, because I was tired of him sitting in a box.
That was pretty cool.
Thank you. Just kind of checking out what's going on. I'm very excited for AoS 2.0. It seems like they're incorporating a lot of stuff that everybody was like, oh, this is what makes sense. And they're like, yep, this is what makes sense. So, like the base-to-base combat, that kind of stuff. It makes me very excited for where the game is headed. So I haven't done much prep other than the Sea Guard. I've kind of been in a bit of a hobby lull. I did 2 tournaments in a month. And for me, that's a lot because I'm old. So I had a bit of a hobby burnout, but I'm getting back on the horse now.
I didn't want to say anything, but oof, yeah, looking a little over the hill.
A little bit.
I'm just kidding. You're beautiful. Inside and out.
Oh, thank you.
Wow, guys. We really got this to a really warm place.
Well, see, when we don't have Davy here, like, we're real friendly.
There's a little too much salt. We miss you, Davy. So Aaron, what have you been up to? What's kept you busy? What's kept you focused? Or what part of your brain is on AoS these days?
Okay, this may not be the answer you're looking for. We'll lead into the answer that you're looking for in a second.
Fine.
But actually,
whatever.
Preparation not for AoS specifically, or like the game whatsoever, but more likely in preparation for the AoS RPG that will one day come out. Who knows when? Who knows where? But I've been attacking all the dudes on sprues that I have just laying around, because who knows what or where, or not where, I guess, but
that would be a really good name for another podcast.
Dudes on sprues.
Yeah.
Is that a lumberjack podcast? Dudes on Spruce?
On Spruce, Blue Spruce. Spruce Goose, no less.
I'm for it.
Spruce Deuce.
Yeah, I'm filling this cabinet up with dudes from Silver Tower and starter sets and what have you, just so I know I have a wide range of different stuff to pull from, which is nice because...
Would you say that's more of a gray tower right there?
Yes.
More of a sheer tower.
As opposed to Silver Tower? Anyways,
Yeah.
I mean, it's very gray, no doubt. But I reckon with the variety of stuff that may be possible or available in the AoS RPG, I got to start now because God knows I want to hit the ground running when it pops.
Yeah.
So
it'll be nice to have all that stuff assembled and then as you need it, paint it up.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and furthermore, I know I'm sort of a stickler for textbook paint jobs, but in the service of a story, when it comes to like, whatever you'd run in a campaign, maybe I'd break that rule a little bit if I needed to paint.
So are you saying that if when you were doing Iron Jaws, I wrote you a story that says, oh, and the Iron Jaws showed up and they had pink armor and they were like, hey, look at our pink armor. We're tough enough that we can wear pink. You would have been like, I could maybe paint these guys pink.
No, I'd kick you square out. Like you wouldn't be invited anymore. No.
What if I wrote a story about an Iron Jaw that was holding the rune fang?
Hey,
would you cut up a model?
Can I pause you right there? Let me pause you right there. You're already kicked out. Boom, you're see you later. But who knows? Maybe I'd paint him, especially with this whole realm focused armies and stuff. That gives me a personal excuse to paint things a little different than I normally would.
Yeah. Well, there's something nice about and there's something nice about I mean these color schemes that they put on the boxes are fantastic color schemes.
Sure. Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. So I apologize for shaming you.
Well,
Repeatedly.
I feel no shame in this regard. It's all of you who should feel shame.
What else have you been up to?
Oh, hey, just because you're a box art wanker doesn't mean the rest of us have to be.
That would be another name for a podcast, the Box Art Wankers.
I'm just quoting Propainted, all right? It just
also made us explicit.
Wanker is not explicit.
Is it just explicit over there?
It's over there, not over here. We're recording we're over there. Then I would really be a foreign correspondent.
Airwaves, no boundaries.
True. There's no boundaries. What's the word? Borders with airways.
Airways without borders. Podcast without borders.
Podcast without. Man.
That's another great name for a podcast. We have nailed it.
TM. These are all ours. You can't take them. But
what would that one be? Just going around the world helping people podcast?
That sounds amazing. Just like flying and be like, I'm going to interview you now.
I think we'd have to be good at it before we did that.
Sure.
Or we'd have to have a lot of money and be really bad at it.
So everyone send us money at the Patreon. We don't have. How embarrassing would that be if we actually had one? Anyways, but what we also have been doing, me and my dear friend Eric have been working on a little website for the...
Wait a minute. You know somebody else named Eric?
Yeah, he's little. He's a little guy.
Little. No, the website's little. My dear friend Eric Oakland sitting in front of me on the screen that I have right here.
Yeah, that's me.
We're working on a little website, and by that I mean you've done all the heavy lifting.
I did nothing.
I just got the domain, but that's been a hoot. That's been fun. I like doing some of that technical stuff. How have you enjoyed it? Tell us what you've been doing.
I've been enjoying that as well. You got a little bee in your bonnet, a little hair up your whatever, and said, "Hey, I would like Mortal Realms to have a website." To bring people to post things up. I don't even know if you had an idea to design it for anybody else but us.
Absolutely, that's true. I just wanted a place to like store our crap. Yeah.
Just put stuff up. So you were like, hey, I want to do that. I've got some background in history in design and whatever. In this case, I just took a template and just tinkered with it.
Sure.
Which Squarespace
hardly even tell.
Here's where we transition into our Squarespace ad. Do you want to make a good looking website? Sure. I just did. All right. I think that's the Wix. I think that's the Wix one.
Squarespace with promo code Mortal Realms. That's not
a thing either.
No,
wow.
Not at all.
If only we could go back in time.
Yeah, gosh.
Get all of those things in place. But no, it was a lot of fun tinkering with it and getting kind of some like, hey, what would we put up here? What could go up here? It turns out there's a lot of stuff that we've put out.
Right? It was worthwhile.
So we've got one of the cool things was obviously we needed a place to put our backlog of podcasts. Now we are hosted on Podbean, so you can go over to Podbean and find us. mortalrealms.podbean.com, and listen there if you like that. But on the website, which is themortalrealms.com, you can go and find whatever player that you want to work on, play on, or whatever, and it'll help you find us. But it's nice it's an easy way to go through and just see what the topics are and all that kind of stuff. You were working on a couple of really cool things. You were like, hey, I need a place to host these.
Sure.
What were those? What made you do those things?
I was worried you were going to say, "Hey, I need to create these trackers." Like need is the word there. No, just for a while now, I've just been keeping tabs of different like spreadsheets of fun data points. Those two words go together.
Organizer, a big organizer.
Yeah, which my room would not indicate that. But it's one thing to have, a list of data, but it's another thing to be able to search it and like have other people use it. So I dug up some online database tool thing and matched the two together. Now you can search through all my little dealios. One is a way to search like keywords for war scrolls, which I don't know if it's useful or not. I just like scanning stuff and eyeballing who's got what. So that's kind of fun if you ever wanted to know all the wizards or everybody that has a demon keyword or something like that.
Which it actually came in, and it was actually helpful for me today.
I saw that, yeah.
Only post on Twitter that I was looking at. I was looking at the new war scroll for the ballista, the Stormcast ballista, and it had, or no, it was for the. We'll talk about whoever one of the units, and they buff either Sacrosanct models or Redeemer models. I'm like, Redeemer what?
Yeah.
What is that? What keyword does that belong to? Turns out, Liberators have the Redeemer keyword, as do Steelheart's Champions in AoS.
Because they're also Liberators, actually, technically. And so I think there's all sorts of keywords out there that people don't know. Like, I don't know, maybe everybody knows this, and it wasn't me, but didn't realize what keywords existed. Like your prosecutors are Angelos, and the shooter dudes are Justicars. Anyways, so each army has some of those hidden keywords that I like to call out. Paul was going to say something. Hit me.
Yeah, well, to me, like, obviously getting everything together in one place is really cool. We've got the Age of Mirth and all that kind of stuff in the podcast, but like, honestly, your database, especially with the keyword search, is the one thing that I constantly hear people talking about, and I'm like, this is amazing, right? You want to do anything, and you're like, I want to do 40 points for this thing. I want to see if something exists, or 60 or 100 or whatever, right? I want to just come up with a theme. I saw this keyword here, and you can literally just look it up and find everything, and it's just awesome. Sure. Because that's one of the things that, like, I know I really enjoy is just finding the synergies. And right now you can't really do that. But if you find that one character and then one character says, oh, but this will work, but it only works on human, right? You just do the search and you do human, which is really hard right now because you've got some of them in the Grand Alliance book, some of them in this battle tome, some of them in that battle tome, some of them, and it just doesn't work. You just put it into the online database and it's just like, everything's right there. It's great.
And I programmed it to make that noise, actually. Yeah, just like that. That's kind of you to say. And also, it was a way to find out like different scrolls that I thought should have words but don't. For instance, I think that named Vampire Lord on the Zombie Dragon doesn't have the vampire keyword. What do you know? But anyway, so that's one of them. The other one is maybe less interesting. It's just like a releases tracker. So I just every time something new comes out, I mark down what it is and when it comes out and what it costs. Because it's real tricky to find any of that information on the website. In fact, I don't think you can. Plus, so that data sort of lost to time. So if you ever wanted to look up when something came out.
Yeah. So you've got all the releases of AoS in a database, and then you've got all the war scrolls with their keywords and names and role battle. Is the battle line rules in there as well? No, just whether it's priest or whatnot.
Yeah, but maybe I'll do that. So like with a 2.0, I'll look to upgrade some of this stuff. And with 2.0, maybe I'll create new different trackers. So if anybody has any ideas, hit me up.
Do you have all the war scrolls on there yet, or just most of them?
No, just anything that was in a battle tome or was released since the game came out. So I don't want to do it dependent on what 2.0 does. Like I don't know what is going to be an army and what isn't. I mean, I'm sure most things are, but we'll see when it drops.
Yeah, there's gonna be some stuff moving to Legends, I'm sure.
Yeah, right. It's gotta be.
So yeah, and we've got Age of Mirth is up there in all 13 episodes that were previously out, or 13 episodes, issues, whatever.
Did you have 13? That's crazy, man.
Yeah, and so then I added a 14th. No, it was up to 12. I added a 13th this week. I've got a 14th ready for next week.
What?
What?
I bet it's super funny.
My friend Aaron helps me out with this one. So, which is a lot of fun. It was fun coming up, having a couple ideas come up that we're able to follow through with, and we'll see how they go. So, and then I've got a hobby blog up on there. So I'm posting miniatures and posting my commission stuff that I've been doing with art, which has been going fantastic. Thank you, everybody who's DM'd me on Twitter about doing commissions and drawing some of cool characters that you've come up with, and give me the opportunity to work with you on that. I'll have more of those up and show them off because it's been a lot of fun working with people. So thank you on that. That's just an aside.
I don't know what's cooler, your art or like the characters that people are sending you. I don't know what makes it interesting. Like, I can't give credit one way or the other.
I don't think you can take them apart. I think they're intrinsic to each other.
Sure.
And then Paul is warming up to put get not a podcast. Sorry. A little bit, actually. I don't know if you want to talk about what you're thinking about doing.
No worries. So I'm going to be working on what are called lightning strikes. So they're just little 2-minute hits of AoS goodness. And they're just going to be really quick shots of stuff that I think is cool, like Mortal Portents, Malign Portents stories, or models from Twitter, whatever. Just kind of whatever hits my fancy. So, and then I'm also going to be doing a blog working on my development of the Gibbering Dome, to getting that from more than just simply a place to play an event at, but to more of an established actual setting. So
yeah, we talked a little bit about the Gibbering Dome. We did a little bit of a recap of Adepticon, I think, on an episode, but
we did a lot of coalescence recap, don't you?
We did do a lot of coalescence.
So we've got to spend some time on chatting and sharing people about the Gibbering Dome, I think, sometime. So we'd love to. So you can look forward to a bunch of more stuff coming up on the website. Really, again, we're just putting the stuff that we love creating and stuff on there. Hopefully you'll enjoy it and take a look at it and be inspired to do your own stuff. And Sigmar 2.0 is coming, which is what we're going to talk about next. And this is always the time where it starts getting people's juices going. On one hand, people can pause a little bit and be like, okay, what's going to happen? So there's kind of like you're holding your breath for what it's actually going to become. So maybe not everybody's jumping on new armies yet. Not everybody's, buying and purchasing, they don't know exactly which army's going to be what pulls their fancy with the new release. At the same time, people are eyeing the 2 new factions, etc. So why don't we start there? Age of Sigmar 2.0 is starting with some new models, 2 new factions, 2 new armies, the Stormcast Sacrosanct Chamber and the Nighthaunt faction.
Ooh, spooky.
All right. First and foremost, if these 2 are on the battlefield, who are you rooting for?
Nighthaunts.
Whoa.
That was a little quick. I'm concerned, man.
I was prepared.
Are you possessed by a Nighthaunt right now?
I don't know. Maybe by Tamra Van Drac. Maybe.
You have to tell us. That's the law, like a cop.
Aaron, which one of those is appealing to you?
I'm thinking Sacrosanct or Sacrosanct. That's a lot of consonants in there. The Stormcast ones, I think they're just cool as heck. In that, I'll get into it, I guess. I'm just into I'm going to say the lightning motif, which obviously is by no means new to these guys, but like when you're missing sort of the magic in the lightning motif, I feel like that's an angle that we haven't really pushed all that much. So I'm
magic lightning is way cooler than regular lightning.
Yeah, I've always
go up or down, or it does both.
It actually starts in the middle and goes either way. In Australia, it spins the other way.
By the way, this is our new handshake.
All right. So, fun fact: I actually had a conversion planned for Stormcast using the Eldar Wraithlord loincloths to use as loincloths for regular Stormcast to make like kind of a royal guard. And lo and behold, Sacrosanct Chamber has the robes and the loincloths and everything already on the model. So don't need that conversion.
Yeah, I
don't need any conversion.
I gotta say too, my Vanguard, I've painted them as anvils of Heldenhammer, and I kind of thought of them as they are entering in there. So the anvils worship ancient gods and like ancient rituals and that sort of stuff. In addition to Sigmar, they're one of the oldest chambers, I guess.
Yeah.
And kind of set in their ways a little bit. So I kind of thought of them as kind of like ancestral worship and slay their foes, but bring their lay their foes to rest, that sort of thing. But so kind of more of like a priestly and kind of magic warding, they're entering into Shyish. These guys the Sacrosanct Chamber is perfect for that. And that's exactly what the story is this chamber built for battling Shyish, Nagash.
Yeah.
So I missed the boat. The Stormcast, the Sacrosanct Chamber seems pretty cool. I'm definitely going to have to find a way to sprinkle them in or create a faction army.
We've got two big elephants in the room. Number one is, how do you feel about Stormcast having architects and magic in the same chamber? Go.
Architects is in the engineers.
Yep.
So I really like that because part of what we've learned from the Lord Ordinator.
You say Ordinator, I say Ordinator.
Ordinator.
This is our musical episode. And then so the way they deal with engineering isn't just science, right? They're looking for ley lines. They're looking for how the stars align. There's a lot more astronomy in it. So that it is, the engineering in Age of Sigmar is magical. There's also in one of the books where they're in Shaman, I think it's one of, there we go, musical interlude. They talk about mage rights or wizard rights, WRIGHT, which is kind of this idea of builders and that sort of stuff. So I think in Age of Sigmar it goes hand in hand. You don't have cranes. You really don't have to worry about the same kind of physics we have to worry about. Like, to build a building like this in one of the realms, you need magic. You're not getting it to stay upright just by physics alone.
So my major question is, this is a really interesting release for me personally, because it's obviously its own chamber. It's obviously its own faction, right? But we've got two different design philosophies, because the Ordinator inspired ones have that kind of like quilted tabard, and then the Sacrosanct Chamber has the cloth tabard. So this is a really interesting thing to me, because we have two specific different designs within the same chamber, but they're supposed to be the same. So how does that make you feel?
It
doesn't. No feeling.
No feeling.
It doesn't affect me one way or the other.
Yeah, I mean, I think. I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things where every time they open it up, well, here, let me be quiet. Paul, how does it make you feel?
Yeah,
I think it's a very interesting design choice. It definitely.
How does it make you feel?
It makes me feel anxious. A little bit. Because when you paint up a new force, you usually have a lot of unifying elements. And I kind of assume that the new elements to the design would be the unifying elements, right? So the cloth or the tabards, the quilted tabard would be the unifying elements, but the unifying elements are actually the armor, which is something that's common to the entire rest of the Stormcast faction. So to me, that's a really interesting choice, and it kind of flips their previous design choices on its head. Yeah. Instead of taking the unique thing, they took the normal thing.
How do you feel about I guess these guys, the Lord Ordinator doesn't seem to have as much armor on. But because they have don't they have short-sleeved jackets or whatever?
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think I like that the engineers are a little bit different. Like it's like work clothes. Like they're dealing with soot, they're dealing with gears and oil and that sort of stuff. Like that tabard would get just greasy too fast.
Yeah, that's true. Or it would get caught in like the wheels and stuff.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess I like that you can easily identify who they are and what they do by what they're wearing. Maybe. I am probably a little more weirded out, or that there's another shooting, or mid-range shooting unit, right, with the crossbows. Like there's yet another crossbow unit. Or the sequitors are kind of, they're like liberators, but they just have a maul instead of a hammer or instead of a sword.
And those aren't redeemers, no less. What?
No, they're not. So that they're maybe a little too close to similar to what what we have in terms of hand weapon and shield. Could there have been another way to go? At the same time, I really like. I mean, it feels like you can get these similar. What they're doing though is creating multiple armies within this aesthetic, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the Stormcast isn't. I mean, yeah, you can mix and match, but it looks really cool when you have a warrior chamber. It looks really cool when you have a vanguard chamber. It looks really cool when you have a unified sacrosanct chamber. So you could mix and match a little bit probably, but that having 4 different armies with the extremist chamber, all that stuff is just kind of cool flavors with this main army. So
my only thought to Paul's initial question of having the engineer folks and the magic folks in the same chamber or whatever, I will remind you that oftentimes sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
Oh, snap.
And if my mic wasn't attached right here, I'd be dropping it on the floor.
That's deep. Very deep.
Real deep. Done.
All right.
Next question.
Elephant in the room, number 2.
Okay.
Is the Avatar of the Mortarch of Grief Tamar Van Drak, or is it Tamar Van Drak?
Well, let's hold up on that a second, because we haven't gotten there yet. We're still talking about the models that we've seen so far.
I'm going to put the elephant over here.
Yeah, stick that elephant back.
It's still on the side, still in the room, but right now.
So back to you then, Paul. How do you feel about most of the Nighthaunt army being humanoid and then having horse head glaive wraith stalkers?
I don't mind it at all. I think that they made a really interesting design choice. Obviously, it works really, really well with the way that they designed the models. The horse head thing to me is kind of I don't know if I like it or I don't like it. I don't dislike it. I think it works really well with what they had on the range before. They did a really good job with this specific range of taking old models and making new models and making the new models look like they fit in with the old models without making the old models look like the new models, right? They didn't bring the design of the new models backwards. They kind of updated the design of the old models into the new models and did more and better, cooler stuff with it, right?
Yep. They used the old models as kind of some sort of constraint or something an element that they needed to call back to.
It's very much like the Iron Jaws release,
yep.
right? Where you did the Art Boys and you're like, oh, these are cool. And they're like, actually, we're going to make a whole faction about this. To me, that's exactly what they did. And they did a fantastic job of reimagining and improving the design.
Yeah. I'm really intrigued by the Knight of Shrouds on Ethereal Steed.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting about these steeds is it's instead of having kind of like cloth like the Hex Wraiths do, it's their kind of skin is like ripping off of them or disappearing off of them, which is really interesting. But these they're just some really cool. Yeah, I think all around both of these armies are pretty fantastic, and it's interesting that Death has another horde unit with the chain grasps.
And the interesting thing is that we're assuming they're ethereal, right? Because they're Nighthaunt.
Yep.
Which is very interesting. The thing that struck me the most upon first looking at them is I've wondered for quite a while now how they were going to improve on the skeletal horse, right? Because there was nothing functionally wrong with the original skeleton horses that they did.
Nope.
It's the horse's skeleton. There's only so much that you can do with the horse's skeleton, and they did a perfect job of actually sculpting it the last time in scale. And so basically all I can see that they did is they made the skull a little bit more alive, a little bit more dynamic, but then they actually solved the problem by adding more to the model, adding more flesh, more cloth, like you were saying. And I thought that was a really, number one, it was a good choice, but number two, I think it fixes a lot of problems that we had with it before because it stops it from being a skeleton and turns it into actual movement, right? Because the problem with skeletons is they don't move. So I thought that was really successful design choice that they made.
Yeah, that's the problem with skeletons is that they don't move. Whose side are you on?
They're not dynamic.
Okay.
Sorry, poor choice of words. They're not dynamic, but yeah, I like that they added a whole lot of new design choices. Now, for me, it's a bit of a problem because I have a conversion in mind for what I want to do for the army, and I really don't know if that's going to be able to work with how integrated and intrinsic the human character of the models is.
Sure.
We'll have to see. That's something I'm going to have to decide whether or not I can do when I have the models in hand.
All right. So now we've got these. So in the starter set, we've got these two armies, but then there's some additional we haven't seen yet. We haven't seen the Black Coach in all of its glory. We've seen a model at Warhammer Fest in some photos. It was in a display case, but we haven't seen the studio pictures of it yet. We saw a new character for the Nighthaunt, who's sitting on like a throne, which is pretty cool. I can't remember what his name was.
The name character?
Yeah. I'll have it here.
You mean Kurdros Valentian?
No, I mean Kurdos Valentian.
Damn it, that's what I meant.
The Craven King.
There goes the explicit tag again. Man, what's going on?
The Craven King. So they put out a photo of him, and there's two shadowy silhouettes next to him, and one of them is this kind of death rider. Kind of seems like it's probably either another Knight of Shrouds type, but is on a winged skeletal or ethereal steed. And then there's another shadow, which is our new Mortarch of Grief. So first of all, wow, another Mortarch. Like I think I'm more excited that there's just going to be another Mortarch from a lore perspective, from a gigantic model perspective, from having Nagash and 4 models surrounding him, as his Mortarchs is pretty cool. What are your guys's what was your reaction to these models?
I'm gonna let Paul go first so I can refute everything he says.
Well, good luck with that, bucko. We did actually see a picture of the artwork for the Mortarch of Grief, right, in the video, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
So there were some interesting choices. It looks like the Mortarch itself is shrouded. It looks like the Mortarch is wearing a corset of some sort, and it's got one of those crowns. It's very reminiscent to me of the Eidolon, Eidolon crown.
Okay.
So I can see people saying that it's going to be Isabella because the corset is very similar to the corset that Isabella was wearing. But I personally think that it's not going to be Isabella because Isabella always carried a sword and a goblet, and I don't see either of those things on the model. And typically, when they've redesigned a model, they do keep some of those signature elements. So number one, we can't see her face, so we can't see she's a vampire. Number two, we can't see a goblet. And number three, we can't see a sword. So to me, that leaves a new character, or perhaps, I know a lot of people are talking about Khalida, but we just did a review of Nagash the Undying King. And in that, they are introduced to a new character who is Tamra von Drac. And spoilers, at the end of the book, Tamra von Drac is knighted as a Death Lord. And if you look in Aaron's wonderful little database, you can see that Death Lords is a keyword that only applies to Mortarchs. So introducing a Mortarch, Tamra von Drac, whose brother and this whole story, right, her entire clan, family that she was sworn to protect was killed with a stroke by Nagash. Who better to be the Mortarch of Grief than someone who literally had their entire clan wiped out by the god they are sworn to serve for eternity? I ask you. Go.
I want to make something clear. When
Let me be very clear.
When you are inevitably proven wrong, I will take no joy in it. I won't be happy that you're incorrect. I think that's a very delightful explanation, but it's simply not going to be the case. Furthermore, if I remember correctly, does Isabella also have like a flower or like rose motif? Because the picture of this particular Mortarch also has like rose thorns like nearby as well. So I think that's one more bit of evidence that it's her. And I know we joke that GW often doesn't really follow any patterns, especially when they set a pattern or like set a standard, they proceed to break it immediately. However, with that being said, the fact that the other 3 Mortarks are like previous characters leads me to just assume that the next one's got to be one too. And I don't even like that. Like I'm not even stoked that that's an answer, but it just seems clear. And it's not going to be Tamara. Like a character starting in a book isn't going to end up being a model. I don't think it often goes that way. You have a point, and I want to hear it.
All right. Number 1, Isabella always had a cat with her. If they were going to redesign Isabella, they would have put a cat with her.
Ooh, they did. She's in the Yanid.
Yeah, but that's the wrong model. You see? See how that doesn't work there? Number 1.
Okay, I get that 40K thing. Gotcha.
Yep. And number 2, the reason why the 3 Mortarks previously existed is because there was already a model made for them that represented all 3. So that point is completely based on the fact that the model already existed. And that's why they were actually brought into the New Age.
Paul, don't you bring your real life stuff into my fantasy world of magic, okay?
Boom.
Don't take me out of this.
It's like I'm the Lord Ordinator and you're the Sacrosanct Chamber. Take it.
Regardless, looking at just the outline, I'm amazed at this model. And like I don't often
Oh
think
yeah,
about stuff.
It looks incredible.
Oh my! I mean, how am I supposed to clip that thing off the sprue? Like that thing is way too intricate for me to ever touch. I'm pointing over here because it's on my screen.
Your other screen. You're
So,
not full screen that we're on.
By no means, I'm more interested in the Stormcast side of things. However, with that being said, these 2 models that we see in the shadows are the ones I'm most looking forward to having revealed. So
you want to hear my Boom's like complete conspiracy theory?
Yes.
The rider on the horse with the wings, Kemmler. I think Heinrich Kemmler is going to make a comeback.
I think isn't that Necromancer with hat?
Yep, that is Necromancer with hat, and I think the reason that they made him Necromancer with hat is because they're releasing a new model.
Hold up, is there any reason why that guy on the horse can't be Vlad?
No, there is no reason.
Oh, Isabella and Vlad in those 2 models, you think?
But then why would Isabella be the Mortark of Grief?
Doesn't matter. I don't know. I don't make the rules, man. I'm just real quick. I'm just gonna sit back here for a little bit.
But wait, hold on. The Craven King, I mean, come on, he could be the ghost of that Ghoul King that we read about in the Tamara von Drac novel as well.
Okay, enough. Let's get out of here.
Wait, mine is enough, but yours isn't enough? Come on, you just went all Vlad.
No, I gave you the final thought. You're welcome.
All right, fine. Eric, what do you have to say about this discussion?
We have one more model that's coming out of the Stormcast, which looks like potentially a Lord
Arcanebulum?
What are the new,
Arcanaut? I don't know. I'm just going with AOS words now.
the Lord Arcanum is the new model on Griff Charger. And so perhaps this is what it looks like more like of a cat beast with horns and huge wings. And so this came in the latest in the video that was talking about the Soul Wars. So this model is looks impressive and is also very intriguing. It could also be a Lord Celestant, as most of the chambers have some sort of Lord Celestant, or at least 2 of the chambers have Lord Celestants.
Or Lord Aquilor.
Yeah, the Vanguard has the Lord Aquilor, and then so maybe they don't. So, but we don't know what that one is, but it looks amazing. So there's a ton more huge models in this, like upcoming, not in the Soul Wars release, but soon after.
Yeah, we haven't actually talked about the lizard cats either for the Stormcast, or the cat lizard.
Yeah. Well, and we've only seen so far. We've only seen a quick video from the Warhammer Fest that had those in it, and just we haven't seen any studio pics of those.
Yeah.
So
one in a case, I think.
Yeah. So there's a ton more Nighthaunt stuff. There's a ton more Sacrosanct stuff, and it's all looking pretty fantastic. Like I can't believe how many models, how many units are coming out that are brand new. I'm trying to think of another one that's as big, like the Nighthaunt one itself.
Yeah, I mean the Sacrosanct, which is a subset of a much larger army, bigger than I think probably any other release like by itself.
It feels like Sacrosanct is as big as the rest of the Stormcast.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, just look through all the like the heroes that they haven't even talked about yet. Like, I mean, you just see the picture, like the one where he's sucking the soul up with the lantern, or there's like two different old guys like out there.
Yeah.
Well,
there's a lot of them.
Here's an interesting thing too: is that none of the models that we've seen seem to be dual kits yet, right? So we don't even know if when the starter set is released, we're actually going to see the whole release, right? Because when they released the Liberators, then they released a Liberator kit, and that had more options.
Sure.
True.
Right.
Well, that's not necessarily a dual kit. That's just more weapon loadout.
But
so the Sacrodors could certainly have more loadout. However, and again, I don't want to look at patterns because sometimes the patterns, they screw you. But
zig when they zag.
In the Deepkin, like the archers and the hand weapon guys could have been a dual kit, but they chose to make that two separate kits, right?
Yep.
So we may not see a lot of dual kits, right? We've seen more different weapon loadouts as opposed to, one unit could become two different units.
Furthermore, like the starter set is like snap fit, right? So is it harder to make dual kits that way, or can they even? Like, I don't know how that works.
It's snap fit, or are we assuming?
Yeah.
So they are. Yep, they're all push fit, easy fit, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I don't know what the word is.
And so all of them are, even the more complex ones, the ethereal steed, etc. So now in the original first starter set, they also had a majority push fit.
Oh yeah,
weren't they?
Yeah, I mean, I'm putting some of them together now, and I don't think
the Dracoff Lord was not.
They were just minimum pieces.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're just designed to be easy, but by no means.
Yeah, they weren't pushed.
Yeah, I apologize. You're correct. They released the push fit models after the starter box released.
Correct.
Absolutely correct.
But they are going. Games Workshop in general is moving towards having at least a portion of their line being push fit. So in the 40K, they've got a number of the new Space Marine units where they still even the single boxes that came out, they have push fit options.
Let me just take a moment here and let's just marvel at the fact that like the amazing sculpts that we've seen for the Nighthaunts and the Sacrosanct Chamber, right? Like they are legitimately amazing, and they look like they're again pushing the edge of what's possible in plastic, right? If you look at that Hangman figure where he's got his axe on a plume of smoke, and that's the base that attaches to the base, and then he's got the body, and then he's got a hangman's noose, and then and that's push fit, right? Like that's not even like we're going to design a plastic model, we're going to break it into 17 different pieces, and you're going to put it together, and it'll be fine. We're going to make a push fit model that looks that absolutely devastatingly incredible. Like that just blows my mind that we're at this point where they can make such iconic models and iconic sculpts, and they're push fit. That just blows my mind.
Yep.
I'm not gonna marvel because I don't want them to get lazy, so I'm gonna pretend like it's no big deal.
Well, are you gonna DC instead?
I was just gonna say, one, IP infringement. We're crossing IPs, and two, marveling for about 30 minutes. So let's transition. So we know that there's a ton of great models coming out. Pre-orders are up on the 16th, and then the week after they're going to be in people's hands. The starter set has 54 models in it.
Wait, is it the week after or is it 2 weeks after?
23rd, I thought.
Is it? 16th to the... So the pre-order is 16th.
Yeah, pre-order 16th. I thought it was the 23rd, but I might be completely wrong.
That's 7 days later.
Sure, you gotta keep going.
So we're going to get a starter set with 54 models. It's coming. Now, this is interesting. In this next release cycle for AoS 2.0, we're getting a starter set. We're getting a core rulebook. And we're getting a general's handbook. And we're getting Malign Sorcery. So we're getting 3 pretty good size kind of pieces that add rules or rule options to Age of Sigmar.
So we're getting a starter set, a base game, an expansion, and an update, all in the same weekend.
Depending on how you define those words, sure.
So the starter set is going to have the base game in it with the 54 models, the core rule book, and maybe a quick campaign book called the Grim Forge or something to that effect.
Glimpse Forge?
Glimpse Forge. And they're going to what's interesting is the core rule book is going to give us, now we have 18 pages of rules instead of 4, which I'm a little bummed about. I kind of wore the 4-page rule set as a badge of honor.
Sure.
But what they're doing is they're folding in all the errata, all the FAQs that have come based off of those that were applied to those 4
Do you know
pages.
how many 4-pagers I have just sitting on the shelf? I have 6 of them. What am I gonna do with those?
Pull them, stretch them.
I could do that. I'll probably just keep them till I die and then be buried with them. I'm gonna just insert it is the 30th, not the 23rd.
Cool.
Oh, thank you.
So we're getting a bit more rules, and they've been leaking kind of what these rules are over the last, not leaking, previewing them over the last 3 weeks or so. So the core rulebook is going to have these 18 pages of rules. The first half of it is going to be new lore or recap of the past, Age of Myth, Age of Chaos, Age of Sigmar, and then now kind of going into the Soul Wars. And then the second half of it is all kind of rules for making the games better. It's gonna have some open play, it's gonna have some narrative play, and it's gonna have match play stuff. As far as getting this is our first core rule book for Age of Sigmar. How are you guys feeling about that? Is there any rumblings you've been hearing about it, or opinions on it that you like or dislike?
I've been hearing a lot of rumblings about people saying that they're fixing the release of Age of Sigmar to begin with. And that's really frustrating to me personally.
Who said that? Name names.
I don't remember.
I'm kidding. Don't. That was just a joke.
Because I wasn't gonna. I'm like a reporter, and I keep my sources secret. Thank you.
Foreign correspondent.
Foreign correspondent reporter. Yeah.
Which is better.
Reporting from the field, literally. So, to me, I honestly completely disagree with the idea that they're actually releasing Age of Sigmar for the first time, right? Even without points, etc., I just genuinely disagree with that statement on its face. I think Age of Sigmar, as it was released, was an awesome kind of brave thing to do to reset and to really break us as players out of the mold of what a war game could be. And for me, that just opened up so many options, and especially the way when they released the General's Handbook and they expanded the options, etc. But I mean, I've heard it on podcasts multiple times, and I completely agree with it, is that it made you stop and look at your collection and go, what if I just wanted to play with everything? What if I wanted to have more fun with everything I had instead of worrying about the next tournament, right? And I feel like we've gotten a little bit into that mode of worrying about match play to the exclusion of everything else. I know the Neos and everything are pushing that into a more prominent space, and I think that's awesome because I think we need that. But I definitely don't think that this is the premiere of Age of Sigmar. I don't think this is what the game was intended to be when it was released. I think the game, with its 4 pages, was actually a really brilliant implementation of a war game, and it brought us to a place where we could actually appreciate what is being released now. Not that it wasn't great before, but we can appreciate and understand what's actually being done when we're doing this 2.0.
I mean, I haven't necessarily heard anybody saying that this is what they intended, or that. I certainly know that contextually, and I think there are evidence that some of the release of Age of Sigmar had a negative effect on some of the community, and that they wish they would have done some things differently. But I think that overall it's been a very successful experiment, and I don't think anybody would could argue against the idea that they've, through their community engagement and their kind of engagement with the rule set and people's feedback, they've had 3 years of really great growth. And I think, Age of Sigmar 2.0 it doesn't feel like a new edition. It's just them kind of cleaning things up, right? It's taking a lot of that stuff. None of the rules that they've introduced, like you said at the top, anything like scary or like out of the blue or mechanics changing. It's just cleaning some things up. It's just shifting things around, and it could be just more experiments, right? Hey, what if we did this and what if we did that? And it feels like they're even, because they're so confident in what they put out in Age of Sigmar, that they're doing minimal kind of changes to it and just clarifying text, etc., that they're putting out so much other stuff to support it. Like, I think the amount of stuff that they're putting out, to me, just shows how much they're investing in the foundation of this rule set. That's my opinion. Yeah, I mean, I think that, I'm trying to think that I was just looking up, the past editions. Like Warhammer First Edition was 1983, Second Edition was 1984, Third Edition was 87. So that was only a 3-year difference. And then it wasn't until 96, so it was like 9 years later, that they did Fourth Edition. 4 years after that was Sixth Edition. 6 years after that was Seventh, and 4 years after was Eighth. So, like, the speed of like changing, this isn't like I don't feel like we're getting a new edition in this sense that some of these other editions were big changes, but it feels like just a big update and a huge explosion and celebration of what we have.
Well, and just as a historical context for me, from 5th to 6th was a huge change, right? 5th to 6th completely changed the way that you ran your army, changed the way that all the rules worked, changed the way you chose your army. 6th to 7th was kind of a refinement of 6th edition into what 7th edition was. And then 8th basically reset the bar again, and kind of, it took a lot of the stuff from before, but then rewrote the rules or made them work a little bit differently. And I think what AoS was always intended to be from the beginning was a living rule set. And what we're seeing right now is we're seeing the living rule set be turned into what everybody thought that it should be from playing with the original 4 pages, right?
Yep.
And to me, that's not a correction. It's a living rule set. It's intended to work that way, right? And that, to me, is just amazing that we could get that out of, GW, basically. Because, living for so long without that, where you got maybe an FAQ update every 2 years, to have an actual living rule set is just fantastic. And I
Paul,
think
how did you survive? How did you survive?
Well, I'd never played narrative. I never played open. I always played match play, and I went to a lot of tournaments because that was all anybody would play.
So you could say that you weren't surviving. You weren't. What kind of life was that?
No. I was always playing tournament armies, painting tournament armies. No open play, no narrative. It was terrible.
Nary a spider in sight. I don't know if I want to go down this path, but I wonder. I think one of the appeals of the first edition AoS was that with the rules being so short and so small and sort of, let's say, concise, the opportunity for supplementing with complexity was that much easier, as if you started with a small universal set of rules and you kept it simple enough, then you could throw as much complexity on top of it as you could possibly want, and that's where you were going to get your in-depth stuff. Do we think the transition, I already know your answer, I already know what you're going to say, but do we think the transition from the 4 pages to the 18 loses some of that effect? Doesn't ruin it, doesn't destroy it, but you lose some of the benefit of starting small and adding complexity on top of it if you already come into it with 18 pages worth of complexity.
I think 18 pages is still relatively small.
True.
Compared to other things.
Compared to the 8th book, yeah, right.
So I think in that regard, and from what I've heard, 18 pages is full of photos and probably in a core book probably has some illustrative examples of some rules, etc.
Sure.
So it's not like, that 4-page rule set is like dense, like they've crammed. That's so my guess is that if they were to do the same treatment, and I kind of hope they do, is that it's like 6 pages.
Okay.
Right. I think there is a mental block, like physical, visual, like tangible things that we use, these artifacts that we use in our gaming, have an impact on our psyche. In past editions where And in 40K, I feel some of that, and we might feel a little bit of that with Age of Sigmar. When you have to have 3 or 4 books to play a game, that gets intimidating, right? In Dungeons and Dragons or other role-playing games, usually the dungeon master is the only one that needs to deal with 3 or 4 books. They're making a choice to engage that way. Everyone else is minimal, right? You need 1 book, or
I just bring all my books, actually, plop them right there to intimidate the players.
Set that up as your GM screen, just the piles of books.
My 8th edition books is this hill. My 7th edition is over here. Here's my DM books.
I absolutely love, and not everybody digs using War Scrolls on your phone. I just use it as a quick reference. I try and know my War Scrolls really well and then just quick reference. But I love showing up with my army and my dice and being able to play a game and not needing a ton of books, not needing a ton of rules, sitting there. And so I really like how light it is. 8th edition was not that.
No.
So I hope I don't need the core rule book. I'll probably get it digitally. But yeah, so I mean, I do think that the size of things matters. Size matters, guys.
Yeah. I think moving from 4 to 18 is not bad. It's not moving from 4 to 200, right? But I think one of the beautiful things about the 4 pages of rules is that it did basically require you to have a conversation with your opponent up front to make sure that you both were agreeing on the same thing. When you have 18 pages of rules and you're spelling out more stuff, not that it's going to be a negative, but when you're playing with 4 pages, there's this kind of understanding that like you're playing a little bit more for fun, right? You're playing it for the joy of the game. And the 18 pages are going to be a good 18 pages. We know because we've seen it, right? But they're the stuff that you would talk about before you were playing the game if you were playing with a new player, right? You measure base to base. You have the whole piling in mechanic, right? And a lot of players would look at that and say, oh, that's just stuff that you're wasting, right? That's time you're wasting when you should be playing the game. But I think one of the great things that AoS does, and one of the reasons why it had so few rules arguments, is those 4 pages didn't have holes in them, right? They just changed because people wanted to play it a different way, right? They wanted to play it a more match play centric, or they wanted to play it a more clear variation. But that conversation that we had at the beginning of the game opened you up to having a conversation during the game, right? You've already had that intro conversation more than, hi, my name is so-and-so, here's my army, right? And it's the same thing with where basically everything is open list because everybody has access to all the different war scrolls. It's more of a communication back and forth, a conversation back and forth. And it's one of the things that kind of annoys me when people are like, oh, you're playing, if you get a double turn, you're not playing the game. You're not engaged in the game for a whole hour. And to me, especially with the way that the 4 pages required you to have this conversation, required you to actually introduce yourself to the other player, right? You're having a conversation instead of playing a game against another player. And especially with the double turn requiring you to not know whether you're going to go next or you're going to go second, right? It required you to actually engage the other player in the whole game because you didn't know if you're going to win or if you're going to lose from turn 1 or turn 2. And I think...
Well, I mean, I'll push back a little bit. I don't think the rule set itself forces anybody to have much of a conversation.
No.
But I would say early on, not having any points and that sort of stuff kind of made us talk a little bit more about the conversation ahead of time.
Yeah.
And I don't think that the problem that a lot of people had was that they got it in the way of getting into a game.
Yeah.
Where I think we're at now, hopefully, is that we'll have an easy enough rule set. One of the things that AoS brought was that very little like arguments about rules.
Mm-hmm.
I actually still had a game just a few weeks ago where we had to talk about whether or not we're measuring the bases or not, which it's fine. But that's the only thing, and it took 2 seconds. We're like, okay, it's fine. Like there's just no arguing about rules, and I think you're right that this will clarify that a bit. What I'm hoping that does then is it allows us to add on some of these additional things like the endless spells, the Malign Sorcery, these new we talked about new realm characteristic stuff, whether it's new spell lores from the different realms, new times of war, new artifacts from the different realms. You start adding on these other additional charts. Hopefully, again, some of them you're coming prepared with, whereas others can be rolled out at the table. Hopefully, those kinds of things help the conversation, right? Hey, let's talk about what realm we're going to be in. Let's talk about which battle plan we're going to do. The core book, I think, has 6 new battle plans. I think the General's Handbook 18 is going to have 12 match play battle plans. That's in addition to all of the narrative battle plans that are going to be probably there may be some in the core rule book. There's going to be some in the General's Handbook. Malign Sorcery is going to have narrative battle plans. Excuse me. Malign Sorcery is going to have a campaign for Skirmish. It's going to have a campaign for Path to Glory. And you mentioned this before, the Neos all over the world running Raw and Rise of Empire and Nova and your Gibbering Dome at Adepticon and a bunch of different places. That's just growing. But GW didn't start that. I mean, we had the Raw was kind of a big one, and some people. I mean, again, the core rule set really inspired that. Just being so open, that the whole system of AoS and the realms being so big opened up everyone's imagination to more narrative, and then they reinforced that through the General's Handbook, the first one that came out, and they're going to continue to do that. Like, narrative is going to be here to stay, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it's going to be it's always been there, but it's just always been kind of background. Now, it'll be more prominent, and you'll see more of it on the mortalrealms.com. But no, I think that we have more room to have conversation, and I would say not on what game we're going to play, but even just being social with a rule set that's light and is intuitive. And I hope that it stays intuitive. It seems like it's going to stay intuitive with the new changes. Again, none of them are crazy, and in fact, a lot of them do interject more interaction in each other's rounds. Right. Yeah. So, like, for instance, the endless spells. If I take the first turn and there's endless spells on the table, then my opponent gets to make actions with endless spells first. So now they're interacting, right? Dispelling is 30 inches instead of 18. So now in my hero phase, my opponent has opportunities to dispel. There's just more ways that my opponent gets to interact and do things during my turn. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's part of the game design that's going to help with more of the interactivity, make people feel like they're part of the same game, etc. So, what else you got to say, Aaron? Do you got anything on that?
I think your initial question way back when was talking about the core rule book and what we were excited to see in that. I could take the rules part of it and just rip it right out and toss it because I don't particularly care. But I think we've been shown a few snapshots of like the other supplemental background information. If I understand correctly, there's going to be a lot of maps. There's going to be a lot of deep dives into the realms. Hopefully they're going to flesh a lot of that out. Not that they haven't been. We read every book that comes out, so I feel like I got a pretty good idea how things work. But every little bit helps. So it's that sort of stuff that I'm most interested in. Not to throw it back to like the whole RPG thing, but it's stuff like that. Those are textbook setting guides and things like that I think would be really helpful to run some of those campaigns. And I like the idea of finding out more about how different armies can live in these different realms and how you can make those armies very thematically tied to the places they're from. So I'm looking forward to, if I'm interested in rules, it's rules like that make sound like a beating a dead horse, but tying those narratives back to the tabletop
flavor.
So that's what I'm most okay, I'm not gonna make a flavor joke.
I thought somebody don't stop. There we go. I was looking for a
there you go. So that's my jam. That's what I'm into.
Yeah.
Are you guys into that too? Do you guys
I like me a narrative. No, I think all of those things. What I like about it, and I have this video or conversation that I want to have at some point, and we can about just how I think everybody who plays Age of Sigmar has a narrative bone in their body.
And if they don't, would they like one?
Even if it's a small bone, like everybody, even if they're a match, if they really if their majority of their time is spent playing match play, there's still an element. They're playing Age of Sigmar. They're not playing chess. They're not playing checkers. They're not playing a stale, aesthetic. Like they're playing with these miniatures that are a story on the table and they're fun to look at. So everybody's a little bit interested in that. And so, and it seems like this is also a kind of a bridge, is that there's opportunity for these rules to be used in match play, and easy to use in that competitive setting. But they also serve narrative play really well. So it's just this thing that they've designed really well, hopefully to fit whatever anybody's doing, that it's not just a rule set that works in one style of play. Like you can use it across many styles of play and get a lot of fun out of it.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. But then, the lore. I mean, there was one, when they brought out the endless spells, there's one paragraph in one of the articles that said, even some wizards, so endless spells, we haven't talked about that yet. Let's get into that real quick.
Sure.
Nagash's Necroquake at the end of the Malign Portents campaign in the winter spring, ended with his kind of plan, his scheme not being perfect, which sent out this Necroquake across all of the realms, and it made Magic go a little nuts.
Yeah, well,
which
what,
I mean,
what was
Magic.
What was it called in 8th? Storm of Magic. Makes it seem like a little sprinkle compared to
Storm of Magic, Necroquake. Which to me, though, I mean, like these realms are pure magic, so this has to be pretty crazy to make Magic go crazier.
Sure.
But now, when people cast spells, sometimes they don't stop.
TikTok, they don't stop, man.
There we go.
From what I was listening to on Warhammer Live, Phil Kelly kind of described it a little bit like when they talk about the ether sea, right? With the Ideneth, they can breathe underwater because they make it more full of oxygen.
Okay.
But they can swim through the air because they make it thicker, right?
Yeah.
So they thicken the oxygen, they thicken the air. So what he was describing it almost is that it's not that there's more magic, it's just that the magic is more saturated, right? So it's more of just like anybody can reach out, and when they do something, it just has so much more power because the magic is all centered in the middle of the realms, right?
Okay.
So that's an interesting... Yeah, I'm very interested to see how that plays out because that's a really interesting idea.
So what we're getting is this Malign Sorcery pack. Mm-hmm. It's a box with 13 miniatures that represent these 13 spells that are called endless spells.
And the number 13 doesn't match any number that we have so far. Thanks a lot.
Except for the Skaven.
Well, I know, sure, but they're not all Skaven spells. What do they line up with? Are they all realm spells? I don't even know.
It's just unlucky.
Yeah, I suppose.
And these spells, what's cool about them is they range from really big, like what they call predatory spells. These spells move around, and there's one that's Ravrak's Gnashing Jaws. I got the name wrong, of course, but
I like Ravrak. That's a good name.
You should be called that if it's not.
Let's change the name. Let's work on that.
Ravrak.
Hashtag Ravrak.
No, you're really close.
Ravrak.
You got it.
Aaron?
Ravanax?
Ravanac. Okay. I was close. I had extra R, not enough N. And so, or, there's the Purple Sun of Shias. So these spells, once cast, can move and destroy, like do damage to units they pass over, but they stay on the table and then they can move again in the next turn. There's other things that allow you to cast spells further across the table, or they allow you to eat spells. There's so there's a bunch of different things that are there's a barrier, which I'm really excited just for the barrier. I remember when before we knew what Age of Sigmar was, one of my hopes was to have some rule that lets you like change terrain or like change movement and that sort of stuff. I'm really excited for that crystalline barrier.
That was from Heish or Heish.
Heish. So there's these And in this book is a lot of the. Now this is split between this and the core rulebook. I think in this one you get a lot of the spell lores from the different realms. So each of the realms has spell lore that you can equip when you're playing a game in that realm. Any wizard in your army can know those spells.
Sure.
So that's kind of cool. And then the endless spells, just add this element to the game where you've got these. And what's funny is I think, isn't there the realm of beasts? You don't get spells, you get roaming monsters or something like that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So there's 7 spells, 1 for each realm, and there's 6 predatory spells.
Ooh.
Is that right?
Are you looking at that and making that assessment?
No, I'm not looking at it.
He's asking for clarification. I don't think we know quite yet. We'll have to. Hey, audience, you're gonna have to buy the book to find out.
So I did.
Because we're not gonna tell you.
I did do a video chomping through each of the spells. So it's possible that that there's one for each. I'd have to go back and look. And I did make that connection when I was looking at them. Yeah. What was it? I can't remember what got us into that one with these endless spells. With so inside of they're going to have inside of the Malign Sorcery, they're going to have rules for. All right, here's the thread that I'd picked up. There was an article about the endless spells, and that there were wizards whose their entire job was to travel the realms, and they were hired to go and unbind these spells.
Bounty mages.
Yeah. And I remember grabbing that. I remember sending that to you in the chat, so you guys in our chat, and then putting it on Twitter as well. I was like, I bet that could be like a class, a wizard class in Age of Sigmar roleplay. I think I tweeted over to Cubicle 7 and got 0 responses.
Oh, thanks a lot.
But then what I saw in one of the latest updates talking about what is called a skirmish at Realm's Edge, is that kind of again where this idea is that your skirmish warband could be going around hunting these endless spells. So there's going to be a whole campaign or campaign setting that includes using endless spells, which is interesting because of all the new rules. Skirmish can really handle almost all of them coming in and just interjecting the way it does now. Doesn't need any changes. Just one change to the Lookout Sir to make it make sense for skirmish. But endless spells would be kind of like one of the breakers. And so in this case, they're just incorporating it right into the Malign Sorcery. So boom, I think it's going to be taken care of. So you can use endless spells, or endless spells will play a part in skirmish as well. So that's really cool. And then I guess the last question is just like, how does General's Handbook exist in this new dynamic with a core rulebook? The General's Handbook has always been the supplement of, hey, here's new ways to play. Here's new things you can do. What does the core rulebook do for us that General Handbook doesn't, and what does the vice versa?
Well, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to points is the obvious one, right? So like that's going to be the General's Handbook focus. Well, I'm not focused, but that's why people are going to buy it, is because they want those points values. I reckon like allegiance abilities and all that jazz is probably going to be in the handbook too, right? Did I make that up?
Allegiance abilities, I would hope so.
Yep.
Yeah. So that whole line of thought, and that's the extent of what I know about rules. Passing it off.
Well, if we look at what the background has been for the General's Handbook, there's been a match play section, right? There's been a narrative section, and there's been an open gaming section. So the question is what we're going to be getting in the narrative section, and we're going to be getting in the open gaming section. So I imagine there's also going to be a decent amount of erratas to War Scrolls that are already put out to make them work with the new rules or to change things that don't work anymore. So it's going to be interesting because I would have assumed that skirmish expansion would have been in the General's Handbook instead of in Malign Portents.
Yep.
But to
Malign
me, Malign Sorcery, thank you.
No, sorry.
But to me, the fact that they put the skirmish expansion in Malign Sorcery says that they had enough other ideas that they were like, no, it's okay, we can put this in here too, right? Because that easily, to my mind at least, could have fit into the open gaming. It could have fit into the narrative gaming. And the fact that it's in a different book and a different expansion to me says they've got a lot of stuff going on with what's in the book itself. So I'm very interested to see where they're going with that, because there's just a lot of potential for what they could do, especially with the Soul Wars, right? Like, they've introduced a brand new setting. They've introduced a new time, right? Like, instead of the Age of Myth, the Age of Sigmar, now we're in, I don't know what age this is, but we're in the Soul Wars, right? So I'm very interested to see where they take that and how that will either influence the lore or be affected by the lore itself.
Yeah, I think you're right. It looks like the core rulebook is going to probably take some of the things that they've experimented with in the General's Handbook and make them, base. So, for instance, here they talk about Realm of Battle rules that let you set your game in mystical landscapes. Open War Battle Plan Generator is going to be in the book. So there's the cards, but it looks like they're going to have an Open War Generator in the core rulebook. There's going to be a guide to narrative play from sieges, subterranean warfare, and kind of creating campaigns, and then the match play battle plans. So it looks like maybe they're going to take some of the things like siege and skirmish and set those rules in the core rulebook, right? So maybe what they've already done in some of these other places, and they're going to put them in the core rulebook and say, hey, here's where all of those things exist. Here's how you play these games in different ways. And then the General's Handbook, same like, so Malign Sorcery then is going to take and is going to create a specific magical focused campaign setting for everything, right? You can take those rules and add this layer, and the General's Handbook can still be there to experiment, right? I mean, you've got points, like you said, Aaron, maybe it updates match play things, or maybe it doesn't. Maybe it adds, like we've seen Path to Glory introduced there, we've seen Siege introduced there, we've seen Skirmish introduced there. Or did we? Was Skirmish introduced there?
Skirmish has got its own.
Yep.
Well, yeah, I don't know where it was introduced.
Path to Glory was introduced there, but then became its own.
Well, and even though both books are going to have battle plans, maybe the General's Handbook is going to be more like balanced. Not that they won't be balanced, but like more cut and dry tournament style type battle plans, as opposed to maybe more general all-comer type battle plans that you might see in the core rulebook. I don't know. I'm just guessing.
All right. Good guesses.
Sure.
So, I mean, they've we had a deluge of release previews come at us. Was there anything else that surprised you guys, or got you excited, or was worth mentioning that we haven't mentioned yet?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking that the Azerite ruins were too short, and I wanted them to be taller, so I'm really glad that they're releasing double-sized ruins. That's a joke. It's not that exciting. Nobody should be excited about that. But they're coming out, and I'm going to get them anyways.
They're cool.
Are they coming out
Windows?
I don't know. I don't know when it's coming out, but it was in one of the previews.
Yeah, it was at the Games Day, I think, or something like that.
Yeah, there's still like a wide range of just supplemental, like, fun game stuff, like new dice. There's a new combat gauge,
new objective set.
Yeah, exactly. I
mean,
mean,
objective set is awesome.
Like the objective set would have been, a week's release, or some part of a week's release, and yet it's just peppered in, and no one's even given two thoughts about it because of all this other stuff that's coming out. But like any other week, that would have been noteworthy. So even small things like that are getting shipped, alongside or soon thereafter with these releases as well. Which it's that sort of stuff that really spices up your game that I'm really into.
Nice.
All right, so I'm going to blindside you with a question. High in the sky, if you could have any one thing in the General's Handbook, what would it be? Aaron, go.
I have no idea.
A guide to Black Library books.
Oh, no, I'll tell you what. I slimmed down factions, like retire half of the old stuff that we don't need anymore.
Whoa!
Cut it loose.
Oh,
Hey, you're gonna ask me a weird question. You're gonna get a weird answer.
all right, Eric.
I would say, again, I would say more experimentation in the General's Handbook. Nothing is concrete with the General's Handbook. At least it's concrete for but just a time. It always has an expiration date.
Mhm.
And so try some new things. Put out some modular alternative rules. Like the one of the things that I really enjoyed about the End Times is they added on all this cool stuff, but it was hard to play it because we were kind of stuck. Age of Sigmar in this General's Handbook format allows us to just kind of add new things and try new things and experiment. The more we're just doing that and trying new things, and if they're layers on top of our match play games or layers on top of our narrative games, whatever it is, I think that just keeps the community more malleable. It keeps the player base malleable and willing to try new things. And I think that means that we're also then in a good mindset for change. So that's what I'd like to see out the General's Handbook, is to be that kind of that pressure that keeps molding us and changing us and kind of keeping us moving. Like we can't sit still too long.
Sure. It keeps people on their toes.
Keeps it fresh. So that's a vague answer. A specific answer, very specific, would be I would like to see a make your kit bash rule set, like where you could kind of make your own new unit or your own model or your new hero or monster or
Like they did a 4K, where you can have your own truck.
Yeah, something like I've heard something about that. I don't know that very well, but yeah, so like you would have some charts or something where you could take and you'd have a certain amount of points to spend and add some things together, or everything's worth points, and so you just add it and it becomes this big points cost sink thing if you put all those different abilities into it. But then you can kit bash that and make that from now I've got a new thing.
Is no model good enough for you people?
No.
I want them all, and I want them all on the table at the same time.
And I want them to all be on the same model.
The Voltron of Warhammer.
For arms and legs.
I think Frankenstein of Warhammer, but okay.
Agree to get out of here.
Don't you mean Frankenstein's monster? Because Frankenstein was just a human.
I did.
You got
me.
See, I'm in your head.
All right. So my idea would be to have.
Sorry, Paul. Paul, what would be the one thing? Sorry about that, Paul.
I'm done. It's okay. I'm done.
What would the one thing you'd like to see in the General's Handbook be?
I would like them to have like just a little chart of like 2 or 3 rules that you could add on to any scenario to place it into a specific realm. Right. So like 3 rules for Realm of Fire, 3 rules for Realm of Beast, etc.
Isn't that Time of War?
Isn't that's what they're doing?
I know it's Time of War, but I would really like it to be more into the match play, so you could run a tournament and be like, this is going to be in the Realm of Life.
I think that they're doing that.
Are they?
So good job, man.
So my dream has come true.
Not in the General's Handbook, but in the core rulebook, I believe.
Sure.
Oh, I literally have been on the internet in the last week. So.
Ask to win the lottery next.
I win the lottery, please? Please. I mean, win the lottery.
Done.
Yeah. Yes. All right.
Yeah. All right. All right. I think that's everything. I mean, we're obviously generally excited about this. Oh, here it is. Realm of Battle rules that let you set your game in mystical landscapes of the mortal realms. There you go. Realm of Battle rules different than Time of War.
Sure. Related to the Realm of Battle, which is a thing that I have right there.
So generally very excited. We're all going to be getting models. I guess I will say the other thing I'm trying to do to get ready for this is I'm trying to get my Vanguard chamber all painted up, or at least all assembled and painted up. Like, well, you got to assemble it to paint it up. And then I've started working on, I've got my Drukhari drawn that are a little bit on hold because I'm going to be using them as part of a, I'm not going to say much more about this, but project A Tale of Four Gamers starting in the fall, which will be a cool collaboration with some other, personalities. And then I've started thinking about a Cog City free guild army.
What? No.
Uh-huh. So the Path to Glory book that we reviewed last time had some really cool imagery and that sort of stuff. And so,
Would you say it got the cogs turning?
Uh,
No, would you say it?
it got the cogs turning.
yeah.
Just wanted a
right.
clip of that.
Now make that into a GIF and
Now
then put it on Twitter.
whose head?
It's true.
All right. So obviously, come check us out on YouTube. Come check us out on your favorite podcast app. We'll be there. We're going to be on the web at www.themortalrealms.com. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter the most. We're probably on Twitter more than anything else. So come check us out. Aaron, where can they find you on Twitter?
You can find me at Dos Asos, DOSACEOS.
And Paul, where can they find you on Twitter?
At PJ Shard, PJ SCHARD.
And where can they find you in Wisconsin?
I don't know right now.
They can't.
I don't even have my phone with me. The CIA has no idea where I am. I'm a Black Ops.
And you can find me at Stone Monk Gamer on Twitter. Thank you for listening.
Real quick, you can find us on Twitter at the Moral Realms.
Oh, yes.
We changed our name, so that might not be most relevant. And just real quick to harken back to the website, if there's anything you guys want to see on there, or you want to see more of, by all means, let us know. Drop us a line, mortalrealms@gmail.com. Because we're gonna keep putting stuff up there. So give us feedback. Let us know what's good, what's bad, etc., etc.
Tell Aaron that you like what we have going on. Otherwise, he's going to quit.
Yeah, I literally just have the analytics page up all day, every day.
So click something.
Yeah, please do it for me, and know that I'm watching. Know that I'm just sitting there looking at it.
All right. Like and subscribe if you're on YouTube. Leave us a review if you're on iTunes. Helps people find us and learn about us, and most importantly, learn about the Mortal Realms and all of the creatures, the stories, and the characters here in the realms. Have a good day. I don't know why that.
Why? Yeah.
Well, you don't want them to have a bad day, right?
No, good day.
Good night.
I said good day, sir.